rent versus buying. The age-old question, because you're always going to have different people sit here and try to convince us or me or you what is best for us, but they don't truly have a dog in a fight, or they don't know what they're talking about. Most people that talk about money on the internet, they have never really lived it. They never built a business. They don't have anything successful. They are in debt themselves. They're not even fully, completely out of debt. They don't even completely own their own home, right? But rent versus buying. I'm going to be reading super chats in a second. But think about this for a second. As we go through this, as we have this conversation, what are your thoughts on renting versus buying? When do you think it's a good idea to rent versus buying? And have average consumers been priced out of the market based off of the cost to really even hold on to a mortgage and then the cost of a home? Make sure you hit a like for the YouTube algorithm, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications. Link to the Patreon is in the description as well as pinned to the top of the chat. Let's get to the things that we really want to talk about. Let's get to the money. All right?
Being a single mom for so long, being able to buy a house. It was always something I wanted for my daughter, but it was always out of the picture. I was not very good with my money. I was living paycheck to paycheck.
She was very...
Hold on 1 second. Give me a second, Freaky Jason. Are you telling me, because I have not seen this video at all. Shout out to Persevere Data TV. I'm going to be reading Super Chat shortly. Are you telling me that we have a man, a black man, and from all optics, that was a white woman that was talking about being a single mother, and he decided to wife a single mother? This is what I'm seeing from optics ahead of time. I see a man, a black man, who seems to have become a stepfather, and now we having a conversation of renting versus buying. I'm just asking. Let me go ahead and get into the video.
Nervous about buying a home, and she didn't think that we could do it.
Oh, help.
Yes.
Yep, I was right. Yep. Oh my goodness. You never know what you're going to get when you watch these videos. Oh my goodness. Umar Johnson, brother, is going to be mad at you, and he is going to give you 500 lashes. Umar Johnson is going to give you 500 lashes as a result of getting with a snow bunny. Umar Johnson is not going to have it. Umar Johnson would not like what it is that he see playing out right here as far as this man coming over here and not marrying a single sister with a child. All right, let's not get distracted. Let's focus.
To buy or not to buy has never been a simple...
Hey, can we get a round of applause for everybody that just joined the Patreon? Shout out to Julian Brown getting to that bag. Welcome, my friend. Hopefully I'll see you in Dallas.
decision.
We'll put it on Easter.
That won't fit in here. I don't think so.
And this ever-changing housing market isn't making it any easier. With surging mortgage rates, record-breaking rents and home prices, a potential economic downturn, and other lifestyle considerations, there's so much to factor in.
This is an extraordinarily unique market because of the pandemic and because there was such a run on housing. So you have home prices very high, you also have rents very high.
On average, across the 50 largest United States metro areas, a typical renter pays about 40% less in rent than a first-time homeowner.
A typical renter pays about 40% less in rent than a typical homeowner. Let me rewind that. Let me get that stat one more time. That sounds a little off.
Very high. You also have rents very high.
On average, across the 50 largest United States metro areas, a typical renter pays about 40% less in rent than a first-time homeowner.
A renter pays, that doesn't make sense. I think that they got their words mixed up. Maybe they're saying that their monthly payment is 40% less than a first-time homeowner. But they're saying that a renter is paying about 40% less than a first-time homeowner. But they're saying 40% less in rent. Let me just make sure I got the words right.
A typical renter pays about 40% less in rent than a first-time homeowner.
Let me continue to watch the video. That don't even sound right. I don't know if they just communicated it wrong or what, but it doesn't sound right.
However, that's not the case for everyone.
We'll be paying close to the same amount.
Dang, he gave her his last name too. He gave that Snow Bunny. Let me look at this. Ooh-wee. Gave her his last name. He said, I do. He said, listen, our names is Jernigan. Our names is Jernigan.
But not have any of the amenities. It just makes more sense to make this move.
Prospective homeowners and investors often travel across the country and sometimes even the world, seeking more affordable markets. Right now, a few of those places are Cleveland, Ohio, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Baltimore, Maryland.
I think that Pittsburgh could quite possibly be one of the best places on the face of the United States of America. Pittsburgh is probably the most... Look, y'all, if y'all looking to move to a space, if y'all looking to move to a city and you actually a person that is a good person and you're not a dusty, I'm telling you, Pittsburgh is where it's at. Pittsburgh is popping. I love Pittsburgh. If you a Michigander and you a person from Detroit and you used to going over to Chicago and Chicago was all messed up and stuff like that, y'all know how we used to, people back in the day, we used to go to Cedar Point, we used to go to Mackinac Island, we used to go to Traverse City, and we used to go over to Chicago. Don't go to Chicago. Some of y'all drive 4 hours or 4 and some change over to Chicago. Go over to Pittsburgh. It's the same distance. It's the same amount of time. It's a vibe. Pittsburgh is a vibe. I love Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is the spot. If you are in the Midwest or you on the East Coast and you're looking for a more affordable city with a great culture, a great food scene, dope people, when you drive into the city, it looks like it's been carved out of a mountain. It's perfect. It's a sports town. It got looks, vision, views, vibes, all of that. Go back and look at my video that I documented Pittsburgh in. Pittsburgh is slapping. A lot of y'all not familiar with Pittsburgh, but I'm telling you, you need to look at it. Just visit it this year. Visit Pittsburgh in the summer and see what it's like. It's one of the most amazing places that I've ever visited in the United States of America. Super dope.
Matter if the market gonna crash or not. Something gonna happen, but we're not sure what. Maybe it's gonna be back again, maybe it's not. We're gonna keep going, doing it.
I was at work and I get a phone call from Stephanie and she
Hey,
said,
big dog, tuck your stomach in. Tuck it in. Don't just let it all out. You on national TV. This is going to get thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of views. Suck it in, big dog.
that they had to evacuate the apartment. It didn't register at first. I still get choked up thinking about it. I just raced home
Don't cry.
and the police tape was over. I didn't know where she was at. Her and the 3 girls
3.
were like just in tears. I'm sorry. I don't like talking about it.
Leland and Stephanie Jernigan had to move out of their Cleveland apartment in January
This man became a stepfather. Married a white woman against Umar Johnson's wishes. Oh, he gonna get 1,000 lashes.
2019. A neighboring apartment had a fire, forcing them to stay with family for a few days, and then a hotel. Just 10 days after Stephanie gave birth to their daughter, Tatum.
She slept in her car seat the first night because we had nowhere to put her.
Leland Jernigan always dreamed of purchasing a home of his own, but that fire put a wrench on his plans.
I had a little over $5,000 saved. We were gonna use that to try to get a house of our own. I had to utilize a lot of that money.
Where you go to get? All right, so listen, let's put it in perspective. Come on, y'all, hold on. $5,000, in my opinion, is not hard to save. You need to lower your lifestyle. It's not just about how it is that you live, and you need to stop having kids. Can we please just cut the crap and let's get right to it? Stop having children out of wedlock, and then start blaming everybody else for how much it costs for you to live. Where are you going to go that you can put a down payment of $5,000 and buy a home? I'm not familiar. Where are you going to go to where you can put, even if you're doing 3.5%, I don't know any spaces where you can go and buy a home for the equivalent of under what, $120,000, and you putting 3.5% down, let alone 20%. If you're putting 20% down on a $300,000 home, that's $60,000. I don't know what's going on out here with these streets.
To find a place and to buy everything else that we had lost. The house was just totally taken off the table. And as a man, you don't want that for your wife and your kids. Like, you want to be able to provide. March 16th, 2020, I get a phone call from my boss, like, hey, we're closing up.
Meanwhile, Stephanie was on maternity leave and demoted as a result of the pandemic. Within a few months, Leland found a new job. While it pays about $20,000 less than his previous job, the family is finally back on track with their...
I'm so confused. This reminds me of one of those old episodes of House Hunters. So you're making $20,000 less. She was on maternity leave. You got one child and then two stepchildren. You only have $5,000 saved, but now you got enough money to be able to buy a house. All right, let me just watch it because this is wild. This is absolutely wild to me.
savings. On April 4th, 2023, they closed on their first home.
Tatum talks all the time about going to the new house, going to the new house. Is it our time yet? That's what she says.
It's not my turn.
It's not your turn, you're right.
It'll be your turn soon. I cannot wait to see her face when we walk in the door.
After about a decade of record low mortgage rates and record high home prices, the United States housing market has slowed down. From January 2022 to January 2023, sales declined by 37%, and while prices increased 1.3% during the same time, those numbers drastically fluctuated throughout 2022.
I'm still trying to get to the point where I can understand exactly how it is that he can afford to buy a home all of a sudden. But we'll get there, apparently.
And while it's often been said that buying a home is better than renting, it's not as straightforward right now. In December 2022, in 45 of the 50 largest U.S. metros, it was more cost-effective to rent than buy. That's up from 30 markets from the prior year. In the top 10 metros that favored renting, monthly starter homeownership costs were an average of $1,920 higher than rents. And the gap is only getting bigger.
So they're saying that the gap, according to the statistics and the data that they're citing, they're saying that the gap between how much it costs to rent versus how much it costs to own is wide. And they're saying it's getting wider because the cost of housing is going up and the cost of how much it costs to finance that housing is also going up because we know that the Feds is continuing to raise interest rates. So that is true to an extent, but I didn't know it was that much of a gap. I know the true cost of home ownership is not really accounted for by most people, meaning that when people look at the cost of home ownership, they're not taking into account property taxes. They're not taking into account homeowners association fees. They're not taking into account repair and maintenance. And so the true cost of home ownership is not really accounted for by most people when they're looking at the cost of being able to buy a home. Then you got to pay realtor fees if you decide to sell, closing costs, and all of this other type of stuff. And so people really not understanding. You go over to Chicago, and it's funny. I was coaching somebody. And it was actually somebody that was pretty famous as manager. I was coaching somebody that was a famous person's manager, and they had a gambling problem, right? And in that gambling problem, they was like, yo, Ton, I need you to hit me off with some money. And I was like, what you mean? He's like, oh, man, I'm all behind. I'm behind like $20-something thousand on my property taxes. I said, in Chicago? They was living in Chicago. How far behind are you? Like, how many years? Chicago's property taxes is insane, in my opinion. Texas's property taxes is insane. But let me continue to listen to what they got to say.
In December 2022, in the 45 areas favoring renting, renters saved more than $900 on average, whereas in 2021, renters saved about half of that.
We saw the 30-year fixed go from less than 3% to over 7% in the course of just 1 year.
So they're saying that it's the interest rates that's driving up the cost of home ownership versus rental markets is largely determined by how much people are paying in other areas in the market, right?
That's very dramatic. And that made that monthly payment more than twice what it was the year before and unaffordable for a lot of folks.
That's true.
So that's why the housing market really stalled in the fall. Interestingly, we did see it bump back up in January when the 30-year fix pulled back towards 6%. People really rushed in. We saw pending home sales, which are a measure of signed contracts. That's people out shopping for homes during the month. That jumped over 8% in January compared with December. And that was surprising, but it was people saying, okay, maybe I've got a chance to get in.
As for the 5 areas in 2022 and 20 areas in 2021 where buying made more financial sense, families saved about $240 on average in both years. And Cleveland was number 1 on that list in 2021. While the city has since flopped to the other side according to averages, it's not by much. The Jernigans purchased this home for $285,000.
All right, so they purchased the home for 285 bands, all right? My mental math may be a little bit fuzzy, but if my calculations are correct, that's the equivalent of about 20% is $57,000. All right. Carry the 1. Yeah, that's about $57,000. 28 plus 28 is 56, plus the extra 500 times 2, that's 57. So if you was to put 20% down, right, you would be putting down $57,000. Right? Now, let's break this down if you was to put down 3.5%, right? And so the easy way to do this is $3,500 for every $100,000 that they're financing, right? So that's 3.5, 7. And let's just round it up to a cool $300,000 instead of the 285. So you basically looking at about a little less than around $10,000, right? If you're going to put 3.5% down, then you're going to put about $10,000 down on a $285,000 house. And then you got to get a inspection, and you got to make sure that everything, and then we got to take into account if you ever going to do, if you're going to do any kind of what do they call it? Concessions and things like that, right? So my mental math says the ideal thing for a person to do, if I'm in a situation and I just so happen to want to finance, right? I'm going to get a 15-year mortgage. I'm going to put $57,000 down at 20% so I can at least eliminate the PMI, right? Private mortgage insurance. Private mortgage insurance goes away once you gain enough equity in the property to actually substantiate to have this amount of equity. And then they don't have to have the private mortgage insurance, but you're paying an additional amount as a result of only putting 3.5% down, right? But if you're putting 3.5% down, let's just assume that they're going to put $10,000 down on the property. Okay, he's making $20,000 less. He got 3 kids. One of them is his, newborn. The 2 of them is stepchildren. He got him a white woman. She just came back off of maternity leave, and they bought a $285,000 house. All right, let's continue.
About $100 per square foot. And the average rate on the 30-year fixed is 6.44% as of April 2023. The Jernigans locked in 6.625%, taking their monthly principal and interest to about $1,800.
So for those of you that have never bought a house before, think of it in the same way that you've bought a car, right? And that, or you can just look at it if you ever had a credit card, right? But here's how it works when it comes to mortgages for all first-time home buyers and anybody that's looking to get into the market, all right? How it works is essentially when you finance a home, and let's just say you do it for 30 years, for the first, let's just say 10 years plus, the overwhelming majority of what you pay as a house payment, a lot of people only focus on the house payment. They don't focus on the equity in the property. They then depend on the equity and they say, well, the property is going to continue to appreciate over time and then we'll have more equity in it. So let's just say they financed it for $285 and then it goes up another $20,000 or $30,000. And let's say now the property is appraising for $210,000, $215,000, $220,000. So now they have, $20,000, $30,000 in equity in the property, and they saying, oh man, my net worth went up by $20,000 or $30,000. It's always better to own than it is to rent, right? They didn't take into account the maintenance costs. They didn't take into account cutting the grass. They didn't take into account the utilities. They didn't take into account how much they're paying in property taxes. The only thing they're looking at is the payment and the equity, which you then do yourself a disservice because you're not truly accounting for how much it's costing you to truly say that you own the property, right? Let me give you another statistic. A lot of people are not taking this into consideration. Y'all ready to do some work? Ready to do the math? You might want to rewind this. Let's say hypothetically, right, that because I went through this and I just had to go ahead and take care of it, right? Let's say hypothetically that something happens to you, okay? Or let's say something happens to a parent and they own the home or the home was in their name. The mortgage company now has the right to then foreclose on that property, and you don't automatically inherit it unless you can come up with the financing or the resources to be able to pay that property off in its entirety and then move it into your name. Y'all not hearing me because it's a lot more complicated when you're dealing with finance companies and what their rules are for what happens in a life event for what happens to your family members, right? The mortgage company has the right to then be able to foreclose on the property, right? And they're able to divest themselves from the original financing if they find out that a family member then passed away. And then whatever it is that's happening between you and all of the siblings or whatever, that's got to be worked out. And you got to come up with the money to be able to pay it off completely. But my point is that most people focus on the payment and they don't focus on all the other intangibles that come along with being able to own a property. Let's continue.
Stayed here, we would pay $1,700 a month. We would pay $300 and something for storage. Huge area for my mom, a huge bedroom for us. The girls can have separate bedrooms that are bigger than the ones that they have now.
So the bottom part is all of your grandma's and the top part is all of our bedroom. So our bedroom is
Oh, snaps. Grandma gonna be living there too? So you got a wife, a husband, 3 kids, and grandmother is gonna be living there. Now it's starting to make sense. The way that they can afford the home is they having somebody else help support what's going on as far as the payments in the home.
that
Right.
big from edge to edge.
A huge backyard, which Tatum can run around in, 4-car garage.
Markets in the US in which homeownership offers lower monthly costs include Memphis and Pittsburgh, among others. Nationally, home prices were higher at the beginning of 2023 than they were at the start of 2022. But that's also constantly changing. So, how does one decide?
I'm gonna be reading super chat shortly. Let me add this into this as a caveat, right? Because it's not as simple as this. Most people don't truly even get the value out of a home unless they live there for at least 10 to 15 years. Let me say it one more time. And you have to pray that you sell at the right time in order to make sure that you get as much equity out of the property as a result of it. Most people do not, yeah, Classy Beats, I said it, pride too. I'm gonna be reading super chat shortly. Most people do not get the true value that they're supposed to get out of a home if they do not hold on to it for at least 10 to 15 years. Because you also have to take into account in addition to all of those other things, down payment, closing costs, property taxes, mortgage and condo and maintenance fees, interest that you're paying over to the mortgage company, hoping that it appreciates. And then they're not even taking into it the fees that's associated with selling the property, such as realtor fees, right? You're paying that 6%. Now let's say that property is $300,000 and they paying that 6%. Well, then that's $18,000 that you got to pay over to the realtor in order to sell the property. A lot of people really don't take into consideration the cost of allegedly looking to own a home. All right, let's continue.
The best way to make this decision for yourself is to take a closer look at your finances.
You don't buy a house based on the price of the house. You buy it based on the monthly payment. That's going to be principal.
She is off. Everything that she's telling you right now is off. She's telling, let me just replay it. Let me tell you how off it is. And this is how you know, just because they're on the internet doesn't necessarily mean that they're telling you the truth. Let me show you how off she is. We don't teach this in the Patreon. We teach a completely different thing.
Look at your finances.
You don't buy a house based on the...
Yes, realtor fees is paid out by the seller, which is why I'm telling you that when you go to sell the property, it's going to cost you based off of how much you sell the property for, around 6%. Most of the time, it's 3% that goes to the person that's selling the house, and 3 people that goes to the person that or the realtor that's selling the house for you, and 3% goes to the person that's buying the house or showing you the house. Right? It is paid by the seller, but you are the owner, so you are the seller. But let me tell you, listen to what she just said. Listen to what she just said, and this is the thing that's wrong with consumers today. Okay? Listen to what she says closely. Don't just skip over it.
Price of the house, you buy it based on the monthly payment. That's going to be principal and interest and insurance and property taxes. If that calculation works for you and it's not that much of your income, perhaps a third of your income, then it's probably a good bet for you, especially if you expect to stay in that home for more than 10 years.
Now, she's right about the idea if you're expecting to stay in a home for more than 10 years. This is why I was telling you that you truly start to see the value, or you can start to extract some value out of your home if you stay in it for more than 10 to 15 years. I just told you that, right? But more importantly, you should not be purchasing a home based off of the payment. That's like saying, how can you not apply that to everything? You shouldn't be buying a car based off of the payment. It's a lot of people that's upside down in their homes. There's a lot of people that's upside down in how much they owe for the car versus how much the car is truly worth. That's why they say don't look at a car as an appreciating asset, but as a depreciating asset, because the minute that you drive it off the lot, it depreciates by at least $1,000, right? You can't look at, and this is why I teach people to look at everything from a business perspective instead of looking at the payment. Don't go by your payment. Your payment is going to adjust even based off of what your new assessment for the property taxes are, right? As they continue to raise your property taxes, your payment is going to go up. As they continue to pass millages, your payment is going to go up. As Biden continues to punish people with good credit and start giving it to people with bad credit based off of his new refinancing laws, your payment is going to go up, right? If you have an ARM, your payment is going to go up based off of the interest rates. Right? You can't purchase a property or buy anything based off of what you think the payment is going to be, because then that's when you start to finance for longer than you're supposed to, and you start to buy more house than you truly need. Instead of living and buying a house based off of what your needs are, you're buying it based off of what the payment is going to be. And that's the thing that people make the mistake of doing on a regular basis. You buy a house for what the payment is going to be. You don't buy it based off of what the schools is. You don't buy it based off of what the projected property taxes is going to be. You don't buy it based off of what the projected value in that particular area is going to be. You're not doing it based off of what you can afford as far as a 15 versus a 30, so that you're not buying it and paying triple for the house by the time you get done paying it off. You're not looking at what the maintenance cost is going to be because the house is too big for you to heat. You're not looking at the landscaping costs. You're not looking at the HOA fees. You're not looking at your lifestyle. You're not looking at what your projected career is going to be. You just doing it based off of the payment, and you are going to find yourself in a very, very regrettable position, and it is not right. Do not listen to this white woman telling you how it is that you need to be looking at what it is that you're buying as far as financing a crib. This is why most people don't even put 20% down and they overpay, in which the banks is doing like this. They happy that you're doing it that way. The banks are excited that you're doing it that way. Why are the banks excited that you're doing it that way? Because that's how they make money. They make it off the fees. They make it off the interest payments. They make it off of, why do you think that subprime lending exists? Because people do stuff based off of how much they think that they can afford in the payment instead of looking at how much they being charged in interest. Never give the banks more money than you have to, because that's money that can be going into your pocket, which ultimately increases your net worth by being able to allocate that into assets that make money for you long term. Never do it based off of the payment. Always do it based off of looking at it from a business perspective. This is the thing that the banks have been selling you guys for years, and it's wrong. It's wrong, it's wrong, it's wrong. And I teach my people and I hammer it into them and I tell them to make the sacrifices and I tell them to lower their lifestyle in order to make the right decision long term, because this is the thing that's going to get you caught up. And this is one of the reasons why we got into the housing crisis in 2008 in the first place. Not the only thing, but one of the things.
Will build equity in the home over the long term. Renting a house.
Do you know how much the homeowners association fees are in some of these condominiums and some, even in these subdivisions? Do you know how much the homeowners association fees are?
Really just throwing money out.
For the Jernigans, that calculation looks like this. If they renewed their lease, their rent would go up to $1,700 per month. Plus,
why would it go from $1,200 to $1,700 a month? Why is their rent jumping $500 a month? That's a real question that they need to be asking.
they pay $340 for storage and $50 per month for renter's insurance, bringing their monthly expense to $2,090.
First of all, you need to be shaving that $340 a month storage off of there, because that means that you are what do we like to call these people? Hoarders. Hoarders. You need to have a more simplistic lifestyle and getting rid of the things that you don't need. Why are you holding stuff inside a store? Most people that have storages have things that are not even as valuable as the amount that they paying to keep it in storage.
But
I knew somebody that had a big screen TV with the fat back still in the storage, paying the storage fee. Like, man, if you don't get rid of that, it's not looking dumb.
new house, their monthly principal and interest will be $1,792. Plus mortgage insurance will be $125, and estimated escrow $447, bringing their monthly payment to about
So escrow, for those of you that are not familiar, because I know that it's a lot of people that's new to this, or they restreaming this, or they're watching it as a clip. Escrow is the amount of money that's being held by the mortgage company in order to ensure that you're paying your property taxes. So every month, right, they add into your monthly payment two things for a lot of people. You don't just have the mortgage payment, you have the anticipated taxes, right? The taxes, the property taxes, and you have the insurance that's baked into that. So they're requiring you to have homeowners insurance, and they're requiring you, in most instances, and they bake it all into one big payment for you to have, or for them to take out the amount of money that they need in order to ensure that you're paying your property taxes. And so at the end of the year, sometimes you can have an escrow shortage, or you can have some overage, and then they'll send you a check if you have an overage. And if you have a shortage, they go ahead and forward that money. And then most times they'll either require you to pay it, or they'll add that as a part of your mortgage payment, as a part of your ongoing bills or whatever. But what you see baked into this is not just the mortgage. So a lot of times y'all will say, well, my mortgage is only $1,300 a month or $1,400 a month. Well, how much is the property taxes, and how much are you paying for insurance, and how much are you paying for maintenance, and how much are you paying for repairs just in case something happened, right? All of that stuff is baked into that costs, right? We're not even including homeowners association fees or anything like that, but all of that is baked into that cost. Escrow is the amount that they hold over so that they can pay the summer taxes and the winter taxes, all right?
$2,365. If you subtract the $1,000 Leland's mother's contributing, which is $100 cheaper than what she would.
That's how they're able to afford it. So they said, Mama, come move in with us, like the Migos. And mama is helping them with the rent, which is why mama get to take the whole downstairs and they got to live with mama. That's how they able to afford the house. They can't afford that $2,400 payment by themselves. And they gotta probably split the heating costs and air conditioning and all of this other type of stuff and internet, cable, all of that.
Would be paying in rent. That brings their total monthly expense to $1,365. This move, expanding their space threefold and allowing them to take care of Leland's mother, will be saving them more than $700 per month.
Don't finesse me. You're not taking care of Leland's mother. Leland's mother is taking care of you. Leland's mother is taking care of you. Mama!
Most will see their housing wealth grow over time. Is that 20 years? Is that 30 years? It depends on how long you want to be in the home. If you only expect to be in a market for perhaps 5 years, it might be better to rent because that's not a long enough term to see real housing wealth grow. So it depends on what your trajectory is for living somewhere versus how much you want to invest.
What makes sense for you and your family is also going to depend on where you plan on living.
In the first 2 years of this pandemic, we saw a run on what we call the
This lady has no credibility in my mind. I don't take her serious as far as the advice she's giving people. She's telling y'all to pay attention to the payment. One thing that I will share with you guys, though. Well, let me let a little more of this play, and then I'm going to share something with you guys.
Sun Belt, that is areas that are in the South, also areas like Phoenix and Las Vegas. Huge sales numbers there, a huge run on housing, and home prices jumped dramatically. In those markets now, we're now seeing them pull back just as strongly as they jumped. And that's because of higher mortgage rates and lower affordability because it's much more expensive to buy there now. One interesting market, though, that has just been off the charts and is still is Miami. We saw tons of people leaving New York City, leaving the Northeast, even California tech workers moving to Miami.
Miami don't want y'all. I'm going to be honest with you. Miami won't want y'all. Most people cannot afford to live in Miami. Most people that are moving to Miami is coming from selling their home over in California or in New York, getting a bag, and then moving down to Miami where they don't even want y'all. Or Texas, right? Because they feel like they're getting more for their money. Let me add this as a caveat for a lot of people that's not familiar also. Most people, when they say that they're millionaires, they're talking largely about their 401k and the money that they have in equity in their home. So, for example, a lot of people sold their homes over in California. A lot of what they had in their net worth was based off of what was in their home. And that's how they then determine whether or not they're a millionaire. It's not about how much money you have in a bank. It's about what your net worth is.
And that still hasn't faded.
Michael Azam is the founder of the Azam Group. He's from Cleveland and has been working in real estate for more than a decade. He quit his job as a registered nurse and
I don't trust any man with an oversized suit on.
has never
I don't trust a lawyer, an accountant, or a realtor that has an oversized suit on. Maybe I missed it.
looked back.
When I started, it was really at the bottom of where we are from a market standpoint, an economic standpoint.
And you got that slick hair? Bada boom, bada bing.
And our trajectory has just continuously gone up. And I've seen so much improvement, development in the city. And we've seen that trending with.
Cleveland is a dope city. A lot of people haven't visited Cleveland. One of the things that I like to do is I like to visit different places that a lot of people aren't familiar with, or is that not as popular. It's not the New York, Miami, Houston, Los Angeles, Vegas. I like to visit the other cities, which is one of the reasons why I'm so infatuated with Pittsburgh.
Out-of-state investors coming in, residents looking for more affordability.
The pandemic made a significant difference as well. We had never seen this kind of housing market before. Mortgage rates dropped dramatically, and we saw more than a dozen record lows on the 30-year fixed rate in just 1 year.
So people were able to buy more for their money. That is, their monthly payments were lower, and that caused home prices just to soar faster than really we've ever seen before.
As markets started to price themselves out, people looked at Cleveland as, oh, hey, I get to work from home. I can be flexible with where I live. I'm going to go to a market that I can afford to buy a nice big house.
Years ago, the Azam Group saw the advantage of flipping homes in Cleveland.
Over the last few years, we've averaged a little over 500 transactions a year. Back in 2014 and 15, 60 to 70 transactions. We started growing from there. The same house at 40, 50, and 60,000 are selling now for 150, 160, 170,000.
So basically what they telling you is that they went in and they started flipping houses. I told you I don't like people that got, not saying that he's doing nothing illegal, but I don't care for anybody that got, like, they just got a thing. A lot of times they even wear a lot of cologne. I just start getting a little bit antsy when I get around those type of people when they trying to tell me how it is that we need to move and stuff like that. But let me continue.
So, there's a lot of opportunity.
So much opportunity, it's brought people to Cleveland even from outside the United States.
I'm Dan Issa. I moved from Israel to Cleveland for doing real estate. We do around 200 to 300K a year from flipping houses.
You ready to go in? Let's rock and roll. We got a lot to do here.
We heard about it from friends, group of investors, then we looked it out more in internet articles, Facebook groups and everything about investing in Cleveland. It was like one of the cheapest to purchase the houses, and like it's the percentage what you get back, the profit, it's very high.
I don't trust anybody that don't speak proper English. I don't care whether you're a black person, a white person. If you're a black person that speak Ebonics, if you're a white person that said, "What up, though?" No. Or if you sitting here and you speaking broken English and you got that accent, nope. I don't trust it. What did you buy it for? What did you buy it for, fam? That's my question. What did you buy it for? Because I know that if you charging me $280, then you probably got it for $70. Put about 40 to 45 in it, got some shoddy work done up in there, and then you're going to double your profit. And then they're going to be sitting over here talking about, yeah, we in Miami making it happen. I know what the finesse is. I know what the finesse is, bro.
26-year-old Dan Issa moved to Cleveland in 2019. His family used money from their real estate business and winery in Israel to start a construction business in Cleveland. Then they
Construction, a.k.a. tax evasion. No, I'm just messing with y'all. That's allegedly.
expanded to real estate.
They've taken themselves as a family and said, you know what, we're going to make sure that we're taking advantage of this opportunity. Flying all the way from another country, they're here to do some damage in a good way.
How many homes have you flipped?
15 already.
This is their most recent flip. They purchased this home for $60,000 and put
They're purchasing the home for $60,000.
in an additional $60,000.
If they say they put an additional $60,000, they put $35,000. I'm gonna tell you the truth. I know what's really happening in these streets. He purchased it for $60,000. He put $30,000 to $35,000 in it. He finessed the numbers and said that he actually put $60,000 in it. That's all paint. The pipes is the same. The original floors are still in there. They sanded it. They didn't even put no new floors in there. They put some new fixtures, some faucets. They spent the majority of the money in the kitchen and the bathrooms because that's where all of the value is getting added into the home. And then they doubled the price and they sold it.
They redid the floors, bathrooms, kitchen, windows, and even the roof. After being on the market for less than a week, multiple families were interested, and this home is now under contract for $195,000.
Did I just call it out? Literally, did I just not call it out? Did I just not call it out? Word for word. I just called it out word for word of exactly how it was that they did it. And I guarantee you they didn't put 60 in it. And their homeboy did it. And they didn't even pull the proper permits in order to do so because they got somebody that worked for them that's doing it for a cheaper price than somebody else. I got a guy. Man, I'm telling you, bro, I know these type of people. I don't do business with everybody. Listen, just because it look pretty on the outside don't mean that you ain't. Now they got multiple families, but come on, man. Come on, man. Come on, bro. Y'all so easily finessed.
$75,000 in profit. Issa says a rehab typically takes about 3 months from the time they purchase the property to when they're done. That costs about $50,000 on average. In the beginning of the year, they were looking at about 5 houses each week. Their goal by the end of 2023 is to flip 12 houses and have 10 rental properties. They currently rent out 3 of their properties, and the 4th they call home.
Do you drink these wines together?
Sure, every day.
And every night.
Dinner we drink a bottle of wine or any alcohol that we produce. Yeah,
L'chaim.
cheers.
They bought this 3-bed, 3-bath in March 2022 for $195,000 and put $150,000 in for renovation.
Now they house, they gonna buy it for 200. They gonna put 65 in and say they put 150 in renovation in order to be able to get that finesse in. But let's just take it on surface value, right? Let's say they bought it for 200 and they put 150 in it, which basically give them 350, right? And they all gonna live together, and it's gonna be in a much better neighborhood than yours is. And they gonna get that bread, they gonna get that bag, and they don't have no house payment, and they gonna continue to raise their families in there, and then they gonna do the house hacks and the finesse, and they gonna put their homeboys in, and then they gonna move city to city and do the same thing over and over again.
While they spent a bit more on this property than they do on the homes they flip, Dan's mother, Munira, says it came out exactly how they wanted. Her favorite part? The kitchen.
When I make the dishes, you see how wonderful. You see the street, you see the car, you see the grass, you see who's coming.
This is exactly what it's like in Dearborn, Michigan. If anybody has ever been to Michigan, if anybody has ever been to Metro Detroit, this is literally how it is in Dearborn, Michigan, ladies and gentlemen. What is Dearborn, Michigan? If you don't know, ask somebody in the chat, because I'm not going to be the one to be able to say it to you. This is exactly how it plays out in Dearborn, Michigan. If you don't know, ask somebody in the chat and they will tell you. Dearborn is a suburb of Detroit. It's a part of Metro Detroit. There's somebody in the chat, I'm sure. We got over 1,000 people in here. There's somebody in the chat that will give you the game on exactly how this plays out in Dearborn, Michigan, or from the people that inhabit Dearborn, Michigan. All right? I'm going to just leave it there.